Hello, I'm Jim Brett, President and CEO of the New England Council. Thanks for tuning in to this month's episode of Inside the Corner Office, where we catch up with the leaders of some of our region's most well-respected businesses and organizations to learn more about their career paths and about the institutions they lead. This month, I had the pleasure of catching up with an old friend, Jeff Thielman. Jeff has had a remarkable career that has spanned the legal field, education, and most recently, supporting immigrants and refugees. He currently serves as the CEO of the International Institute of New England, an incredible organization that works to foster opportunities for immigrants and refugees to succeed here in our region. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Jeff, thanks for joining me today. You know, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for many years, and I'm glad that now others will have the chance to get to know you and learn more about your incredible work.
Thank you, Jim. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, let's start by talking a little bit about your career path. You've had a very impressive and unique background, having begun your career as a trial attorney right here in Boston in the early 90s. Today, now running a nonprofit that supports immigrants and refugees. Can you just share with us a little more about your career path and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So you're right, Jim. I began here in Boston out of Boston College Law School in 1992 as an attorney. I worked for two small law firms in the area, and I did trial work. I tried a couple of jury cases to verdict, one in Middlesex Superior Court, one in Suffolk Superior Court. I had a case in land court. So I was a trial attorney, and we did all sorts of different things. And I liked being in court, but I reached a point where I was starting to realize it just wasn't enough. And I actually landed for a few years in the insurance world. I sold insurance here in Boston, and I met a bunch of people and made a lot of great friends and came away with a great appreciation of the world of business, actually, because I was selling mostly to businesses. And then, the Jesuits were starting a school on the southwest side of Chicago called Cristo Rey Jesuit High School. That means Christ the King in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And they had set up a model where high school students worked to earn their tuition. And I was just fascinated by this model of education. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was to be involved in a mission that had an impact on people with limited resources. And in this case, it was kids on the southwest side of Chicago who were Latino, mostly, almost entirely, and who were looking for a better start in life. And so the Jesuits set up a program where high school students share jobs at banks, law firms, insurance companies, and go to schools. Terrific model. I worked there as the development director on the southwest side of Chicago for a few years. And then I came back to the Boston area. Boston College actually gave me an office, and I managed the scale up of these schools across the country. Then in 2008, I took over a school in Cambridge, North Cambridge Catholic, and then we moved it to Dorchester, and that's where you and I got to know each other at the old St. Williams, the former St. Williams Elementary School.
Yeah, that's right. But in between BC and BC law, you became a volunteer in Peru, and you taught street children. Talk about that and how you got there.
Yeah, so, great. Thanks for bringing that up, Jim. That was a pivotal part of my life, probably the most influential thing I've ever done. I graduated from Boston College, mid-1980s, 1985, the Flutie thing, the Heisman, the Cotton Bowl, all that. And I just couldn't relate to all my friends who were going off into the world and getting jobs and making money. And I just felt like I can't compete with that. It's just, or I'm not called to do it, I guess is the right way to frame it. And so the Jesuits had a volunteer program where you could go overseas and work for 2 or 3 years with people with very limited resources. And so I went to Peru as a Jesuit international volunteer. I went there and I worked at a Jesuit high school that served kids with very little resources. And then while I was there, I started a program that helps working kids, street kids, and their families. So the Jesuit model of education is all about service. And even at the school with kids with limited resources, they all had to do service projects. So we started by inviting kids who shine shoes and wash cars and sell newspapers down to our school to play soccer. Then eventually we got a space in the city of Tacna that we fixed up, and we formed what was called the Center for the Working Child. And then we found a more permanent space, which is still operating today. So I founded this in 1986, and it's still going. It's actually much better organized, more programming, more health programming. The Jesuits have used a lot of people to take it to a whole new level. So I was proud to start that. I came back, and that's when I went to law school. And so I was that experience was critical in my formation as a person, and it was also critical as I thought about my career path. Not knocking attorneys or the law at all, but when I was practicing law, I thought, I kept thinking about Peru. I kept thinking about that experience in Peru, and I kept trying to find a way to get back there. But doing work here in the United States that mattered.
Mm-hmm. So what spurred your passion for working with immigrants and refugees? Was it Peru, or was it something else?
It was sort of, yes, it was definitely Peru. It was definitely, I grew up in Meriden, Connecticut. That's where our current Secretary of Education comes from, by the way. And it was a town or city that has a lot of people from Puerto Rico in it. And so I heard a lot of Spanish growing up, and I tried to learn Spanish in school. I studied Spanish at Boston College. So that sort of got me thinking about people outside of, New England, where I grew up. And so, and then obviously the experience of Peru was profound, because when I was in Peru, I was a minority. I was a white person, and I was trying to navigate a very different culture, one that I didn't understand. It took me a long time to understand it. I was a foreigner in that country, and I had a lot of advantages, no doubt about it. I was an American. I could get on a plane and leave at any time. We come from a country with many more resources than the people in Peru have, but it made me grateful for what I had, what I grew up with in New England. And it also, taught me to be passionate and compassionate and have compassion for immigrants and refugees who come to our country.
Just shifting gears, let's talk more about that remarkable organization that you lead. First, for those who may not be familiar with the International Institute of New England, can you give us just an overview of the organization and its mission?
Sure. So the International Institute of New England is 105 years old. It was started in Lowell, Massachusetts in 1918, and then a branch opened in Boston in 1924, and then in the 1970s, a program opened in New Hampshire. And these three entities eventually combined by the early 2000s. So our organization focuses on serving immigrants and refugees, and usually those who are here, who are just arrived to the United States. So what we call early status immigrants and refugees. And we offer resettlement programming. That's kind of your traditional human services work. That's welcoming people who come from all over the world as refugees and asylees. Also unaccompanied children. We have about, 500 unaccompanied children in services. These are kids that we reunite with family members in New England. And we also help a lot of humanitarian parolees. Those are the people from Afghanistan, Ukraine, and now Haiti. And so that's kind of a human services component. It's the biggest part of what we do. The second phase of our work, a structure of our work is education, which is English classes, financial literacy, driver's ed, mostly English classes. We have about 700 people in English classes, huge waiting list. Lots of people want to learn English. That's a big part of what we do. The third component is workforce, and that is training people for jobs and placing them in jobs. And then the fourth part of our work is immigration legal services, and that is helping people adjust their legal status in the United States. And so we have about, our budget's about $19 million. We have about 170 or so staff. The folks that work for us are social workers, teachers, a lot of younger people just starting their career who may have majored in international relations or lived abroad or know a second language. And they start by working at a place like ours, and they get really great experience directly serving people who come to the United States.
Do you have many volunteers?
Yes, we do. We have about 300 people that volunteer with us. They volunteer by teaching English. We also have a community sponsorship program where a group of people, a faith-based group or a community group, can come together and sponsor refugees who come into the community. So they have to raise a bit of money, and then they help the family when they arrive. It's very rewarding work. All the families, all the groups that have done it, faith groups that have done it, and non-faith groups, community groups, have really learned a lot from the experience. They're gratified by it. They feel good about it. It's also an important thing to do in terms of building public support for our work, because when a group or a church group or a faith group comes in contact with a refugee family and helps them navigate the system, enroll their kids in school, help them get a job, drive them to their first job, they feel better about refugees in general. They get to know people from another country, and they spread the word about how important and how beautiful these people are that come to our region.
Where does the $18 million come from?
Thank you for that. That's a great question. So about 2/3 comes from public money. That's public. That's both state money and federal money, and then a little bit of city money as well. And then about $6 million or so comes from private fundraising. So we're, my job is to spend a lot of time on fundraising. We have a fundraising department that's always looking for contributions. So it's a combination of public and private money.
Yeah. I was surprised to learn that Massachusetts has the third largest concentration of Haitian immigrants in the United States. So how is your organization engaging with and assisting this very special population?
So right now, our organization is one of many organizations that are serving the influx of people coming from Haiti or from the South who fled Haiti years ago after the earthquake, who are now coming to the United States to be with family members and friends here in Massachusetts. We're enrolling people in benefits. So we're enrolling people in cash assistance, which they're eligible for. We're enrolling people in health insurance, mass health, and we're enrolling people in food stamps. We're also, we have lots of folks now on waiting lists for services such as employment services and English classes. And a lot of the people that have come are waiting to get their employer authorization document, because that's not an automatic thing when you cross the border and come to the United States. Into the United States. So we're one of the many groups that are helping the thousands of people coming here from Haiti right now. And the one thing, that we try to say, or at least I try to say when asked about the work that we're doing with Haitians, it is, to be upfront with people, we have people right now that are in the emergency shelter system in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Massachusetts, it's what's called a right to shelter state. So if you have a family, you have dependent children, you're eligible to live someplace for a temporary period of time while the state finds you a more permanent place to live, or while you navigate the system and eventually get a job and make some money. So we have a lot of those folks now from Haiti that are in the shelter system. What I try to say to people is, look, think about this as a temporary thing. Think about this as a moment in time, because these people are done migrating. When I talk to them, they're done. They're called migrants in the media. They're done migrating. They want to settle. They want to be with their brethren here in New England, in Eastern Mass predominantly, and they want to contribute to this state. They want to get a job. They want to enroll their kids in school. There's a story, I just learned about this one family. They left Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. They got to Chile. They traveled by bus all the way up the continent, eventually got to the southern border, crossed the southern border, and then got to the United States, then got to Boston. These people are heroic. They're resilient, they're determined. They had a baby on Christmas Eve here in greater Boston. And, they want to give back. They just want to contribute. And so what I see when I see these folks, they're in enormous suffering. They're suffering right now because they don't have a lot. And we're giving them what we can. All the groups on the ground are working around the clock to try to help these folks, but it will pay rewards for this Commonwealth. They will go to work. This one fellow I talked to today is waiting for his employer authorization document. The second he gets that, he'll find a job somewhere in the state.
Beyond the Haitian community, I can imagine that the population you serve varies depending on what's going on around the world. Can you tell us about some of the other populations you serve and the current geopolitical climate where in recent years you're seeing more of the immigrants and refugees coming from?
So, the big thing that we did in 2021 when Kabul fell and Afghans started coming to the Commonwealth, about 2,000 Afghans were resettled in Massachusetts, about 450 or so in New Hampshire. Those are the two states where we work. And I think across New England, I checked the data, it was about maybe close to 4,000 Afghans came to New England, all the 6 New England states. And these folks, so what we did with the Afghans was over 4.5 months, we resettled 544 people. We found them housing wherever we could. We placed people all over Massachusetts, New Hampshire. We, put out the word to our network. People sometimes had extra space in their homes. They had an apartment they could rent at a lower rate. We did everything we could to find them housing. And now they're on, well, some, not all, are on a pathway to more permanent residency in the United States. We've helped them to go into our English classes, get jobs. And we also have the other population is the Ukrainians. I think the number is 650 right now, people from Ukraine. They've come through a program that President Biden set up called Uniting for Ukraine. Families can sponsor Ukrainians. They come here, they get some services from us. They also get some state benefits here in Massachusetts, as do the Afghans. And we're helping them, same thing, finding jobs, homes, that sort of thing. And so those are the big populations. The three big ones right now are Afghans, Ukrainians, and Haitians. Also, we do receive refugees from all over the world. So we got an assurance yesterday of a family from Venezuela that's coming into New England. One of our sites, we have offices in Boston, Lowell, and Manchester, New Hampshire. And, we receive people from all over the world.
You mentioned that one of the areas where you support immigrants and refugees is finding employment. And in your role, in my role here at the New England Council, a day doesn't go by where I hear from all of our members, or many of our members, they're struggling to fill open positions. So tell us again how immigrants and refugees can play a major role in our region's economy, and how they can, I think, fill the workforce shortage gap.
Absolutely, Jim. You hit the nail on the head. We have an aging workforce in New England. We have a lot of job openings, and we have openings for both skilled and unskilled labor. And so, and if you look at the data, the population growth in most of the New England states has been because of immigration, because immigrants have moved in. Massachusetts would not be what it is today without immigration. Boston, where we're sitting right now, would not be what it is today without immigration. The whole biotech space here in our area, all built by people born outside of the United States. All the leaders of the biotech companies, just about every single one of them, born outside of the United States. Nubar Afeyan, the founder of Flagship Pioneering, which has funded a lot of companies in this area, born in Lebanon. Stefan Bancel, the CEO of Moderna, born in France. So you have a lot of foreign talent that wants to come to New England. In terms of our clients, most of them are well, there's a mixture of clients actually. So we have had some people come in through our system who have been doctors back home. In fact, we have a volunteer who is a retired surgeon from one of the hospitals in the area, who is helping our folks go down the path of trying to become a licensed physician in this area. It is about a 6 or 7 year process. You've got to learn English first. You've got to pass the U.S. medical licensing exam, and then you've got to get admitted to a med school, practice as a resident, then you can practice as a doctor. So to answer your question more directly, we have lots of people who want to work. Some of the challenges are language, so they need to learn English, get better at English, and status in the United States. So prior to September 11th, 2001, you could be fairly easily, it wasn't an automatic, you could be paroled into the United States. You can cross the border and your visa could be stamped with permission to work in this country. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. And so it's a longer process to get an employer authorization document. It's a much more challenging process. Actually, the H-1B limits have not been increased in a long time. So there are a lot of areas where the federal government, which controls immigration, needs to do a better job of passing laws that allow people to get work. But to answer your question, this economy depends on immigrants to go into the workforce. This economy, if you look at a lot of the jobs in the service industry, they are filled with immigrants. There is a disproportionate number of people working in healthcare who were born outside of the United States. The frontline workers in the COVID-19 pandemic, vast majority of them were born outside of the United States. They were people who came here, went to work, and they were defending the rest of us. They were right on the front lines, in hospitals, some in security positions, food delivery, back offices, warehouses, doing all that kind of work. That all came from outside of the United States. So it is important to remember that we need these folks here. It's also important to remember that when they get to New England, they need English skills and job training. And the more we can provide that, the faster they can get into the workforce and the faster they can go to work and make a difference. And by the way, the foreign-born immigrants and refugees are the ones who are very entrepreneurial. The data shows that the vast majority of businesses in this country are formed by people who took a risk to come here in the first place, and so they took a risk to start a business.
I know an Afghan gentleman who lives in the Boston area who lived in Kabul, who was an electrician, and the 103 electrical union here in Greater Boston is working to achieve his goal is to be an electrician. He can pass the technical portion of the test, but it's the English that he's having a problem with. But an awful lot of people working with him to make sure that he can pass the test and learn the English language. But it's a great example of this gentleman is not here just to sit here and collect a check from someone. He wants to be, he wants to contribute to the society. He's an electrician. We need them. But it was a great example of the union stepping up to the plate saying, hey, we'll make sure this guy passes the test.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right, Jim. Everybody that we meet here at the International Institute in New England, they want to go to work. That's the first thing they say. Where can I get a job? How can I get a job? When especially, younger men, when they come, we want them to go to English classes. We want them to go skills training classes, do an orientation with us. They just want to get a job, and they'll get 2 jobs. They'll get 3 jobs. They will work very, very hard. But you nailed it, Jim. The challenge is getting the current workforce, or the potential workers, which includes many, many people whose first language is not English, getting them the English skills they need so they can get jobs. So, those of us in this field are lobbying state government in all states in New England to put more money aside for English for speakers of other languages, or ESOL classes, or ELL classes, they might be called in other states. This is super, super important. The more money that's available, the more people that we can educate. It's that simple. It is good when unions and others step up, and lots of employers that they see someone with potential, they'll try to tutor them in English. But really, you need a professional to do that. We have, 20 or so staff that teach in our English program. Maybe it's 25. With more money, we would hire more people and teach more people.
So for any employers who are watching, listening right now and interested in learning more about adding immigrants or refugees to their workforce, how can they work with the Institute to connect with potential candidates?
They can get on our website, iine.org, IINE, that's for NE is for New England.org, and look around the website. They can send an email to info@iine.org, and we'll get back to them. I will say that, we get inquiries all the time from employers, all the time. And, we've, all over the place. So somebody's opening up a hotel in one part of New England or another, they want our folks. And we try to respond to people. But, the fact of the matter is a lot of the people that we have in services are employed. And those who are not employed yet, oftentimes the challenge is their status. They don't have an employer authorization document because they're waiting for one.
What about the employers who may not have an immediate need, but want to support your great work?
Well, anybody who, thank you, Jim, for that. They're all welcome to make contributions at any point in time. We have, a couple of events every year, International Women's Day, where we honor women born outside of the United States who have had impact on the community. And we have the Golden Door Award, where we honor someone born outside of the United States who's had a profound impact on our community. Last year, we honored the Dean of Harvard Business School, Shrikant Datar. Dean Datar is from India, and we celebrated his tremendous story of coming from India, finding his way in the United States. He talked about how it's still a country he's getting accustomed to. He was a really humble guy, and we honored him. And then, a lot of people in the business community stepped forward to be a part of that event. So we would love, people can reach out to the website, send information. And there's also a donate page there. We'll always take a donation.
Immigration obviously seems to be a perennial hot topic in Washington. So let's wrap up by talking just a little bit about how federal policy is impacting the work that you do at the Institute. Upon the withdrawal of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan in 2021, you mentioned tens of thousands of Afghan people were evacuated from the country. And I know there's legislation pending, the Afghan Adjustment Act, that would allow them to be treated as refugees. How would the passage of this bill impact these evacuees? And what are the prospects for its passing? I did look at the bill. What I was encouraged was it was bipartisan. I mean, you got Lindsey Graham on one side and Amy Klobuchar on the other, Democrat, Republican. That obviously is a good sign. But tell us some more about the bill and the prospects of it passing.
So the Afghan Adjustment Act is hugely needed right now. So 70,000 or so people came from Afghanistan to the United States. Agencies like ours have resettled these people. About a third of them are eligible for what's called a special immigrant visa because there's documented evidence of the service they provided to U.S. officials in Afghanistan. So that's about a third of the folks. The other 2/3 have to go through the United States asylum process, which is complicated, lengthy, and costly. And so what this bill does is it gives everyone a path to residency the same way refugees have. So, I mean, it is badly needed. And, you know, the biggest concern that some people have in the United States Congress, and I have been down there in Washington with colleagues around the country lobbying legislators, but what we've heard is there's concerns about vetting these folks, security risks. They're already vetted. And if, you know, Congress has to come to a compromise and add more vetting procedures, these folks will go and do another vetting. But they've already been vetted. They're already here in the United States. They're living here in the United States. They're abiding by the rules of the United States. If they're not abiding by the rules, if they're not, you know, following the laws of the land, then they can't stay here. I understand that. They understand that too. But, you know, the Afghan Adjustment Act is a simple solution. What it will do, it will take a burden off the asylum court, so it'll save the government money. It'll take people that, you know, we're paying right now to help with asylum cases and other cases. They won't need to do that anymore. The state government of Massachusetts, through what's called Afghan funding for Afghans and then funding the state set aside for refugees in general and Ukrainians, has set aside money for organizations like us to hire lawyers or refer work to lawyers to process these claims, because the Commonwealth has said, well, we need these folks here. Let's try to get them asylum, which is a good thing. And the legislature, and I kudos and thanks to the legislature in Massachusetts for adopting that. But, you know, that need, that cost will go away. So, you know, the Afghan Adjustment Act, and like all immigration law, by the way, is not just about making it easier for people to remain in the United States. It's also reducing the burden on our federal system, reducing the tax burden on the rest of us. So it's a sensible solution that benefits everyone. I'm pleased. We're all pleased to see there's bipartisan support. Hopefully it will get through in this session.
You know, as you stated, that everyone in Washington agrees that the immigration system is deeply flawed and needs significant reform. But there's just tremendous disagreement on what those reforms should look like. So put your, you know, that wisdom hat on top of your head and say, if I were the leader in Washington, the bill that I would love to see come out, one or two items in that immigration bill.
Yeah, I think the way to frame it to everyone is, for sure, we understand the need for securing our borders and for having good orderly processing on the border. I think most Americans would agree with that. Most Americans want to be sure that the people who come here are people that aren't going to cause any damage, but do any harm. I think we're all agreed on that. But what we want is reform that allows people to come into the United States to live here and work here. And I think the way to frame it to policymakers is, we cannot grow this economy. We cannot fill jobs. We cannot fill jobs in the farm industry. We cannot fill manufacturing jobs. We cannot fill service jobs. We cannot fill healthcare jobs. We cannot fill jobs to support our seniors, by the way, without more immigrants. And so we need people to come into the United States. I think that's the first way to frame it. We want a secure border for sure. We need people to come here. So if we all agree on that concept, then we can have a conversation about the details. And the details can be messy for sure, but there's some details that we can all agree on. All employers, lots of employers that I know and you know, want to see the H-1B cap lifted. so that more workers can come to the United States and go to work right away in our industries. All employers that I know want to see it, want it to be easier for people to get an employer authorization document. Most people that I know want to see the DACA recipients, young people who came, now they're getting older, young people who came here and were born in another country. They came here as children who are now been here for 20 or 30 years, who face the possibility of deportation. Most people, Democrats and Republicans that you talk to, want a path to residency, at least maybe citizenship. I would like to see citizenship for DACA recipients. And, I think a lot of what President Biden proposed when he first got into office in January of 2021 and his initial proposal is very reasonable. It's supported by the business community. It's supported by humanitarian advocates like myself. All of us kind of agree with a lot of what the president had in there. There might be debate about one or two things in there, but there's general agreement. So, I mean, you know Washington better than I do. But what happens is that a small group of people raise a ruckus about immigrants coming to the country. They politicize it. They blame immigrants for some of the country's troubles, which is not the case. Domestic terrorism is a bigger issue for us than foreigners coming in creating terrorism. That's a fact. That's now a fact. So it seems to me there is room for reasonable compromise. I had a conversation with a member of Congress at an event here in Boston a while back. And that member, I asked the member, I said, what do we do to get immigration reform? And he said, well, the president of the United States has to expend quite a bit of political capital to get that done. That's how the game works. And so this may not be the moment for President Biden to expend that kind of political capital. We waited during the Obama administration for that expense of political capital. President George W. Bush in his second term did try for immigration reform. I think he was taken aback by the opposition in his own party and bothered by it. And the Bush family in general, both his father and President Bush were very pro-immigration. So I think there's bipartisan support for immigration. We've got to find the right moment. In the meantime, you've got to kind of do some little things, change a few little laws. I think really that's the reality. You've got to make some little things happen to get us forward. And so I think that's what we have to look at right now. That's my experience from being in Washington and lobbying different members of Congress, talking to them that, a big immigration bill may not be realistic this session, maybe next session.
Yeah. There are about 11 million unfilled jobs, and there's about 6 million people unemployed. So we need immigrants to fill, and it's across the board.
Across the board.
It's in human services. It's in high tech. It's every category. So
I saw an interview, Jim. I'm sorry to interrupt. I saw an interview with someone in the agriculture world, and
right.
And this leader in agriculture. I'm just drawing a blank on the name, but she said, "You want lower prices for eggs? You want lower prices for food? Bring in more workers. Bring in more immigrants." And you'll get them, and it'll be easier for us to deliver get product from the ground and deliver it to homes. So it benefits everybody.
Exactly. Jeff, thanks again for joining us today. And more importantly, thank you for the important work that you and your extraordinary team, International Institute, are doing to support our region's immigrants and refugees. Needless to say, New England is fortunate to have you and an organization like yours to advocate every day for our neighbors. So thank you. And to all of you tuning in, I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I learned an awful lot about Jeff and the organization that he is the CEO of. Be sure to tune in next month, where our guest will be Eva Morse of Millipore Sigma. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Great to be on the show. Appreciate it.